Welcome everyone back to Screenfish the Radio. I'm so glad you could join us this week as we are taking a trip into Disney Plus to talk about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Not the series, but the rebooted film that recently aired on the streamer. And I am so glad today to have two of my favorite people and two wonderful members of our team, Alan Sharrer and Heather Johnson. Welcome back to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We have great conversations.
Sometimes. No.
Alan's going to bring the puns tonight. That's why we are all here.
Oh, boy.
I love it. Now he feels the pressure. He feels the pressure for those puns. It's fantastic.
Sure, long fairy tales take a long time to drag on, you know? Dragon. Okay.
I
it's
get
just
it.
Gonna go downhill, folks.
I like it. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers is currently streaming on Disney Plus and tells the story when a now middle-aged Chip and Dale live amongst cartoons and humans in modern-day Los Angeles, but their lives are quite different. Now, after their series has been canceled, long after their series has been canceled, the two are living different lives. Whereas Chip is now an insurance salesman, Dale moves from fan convention to fan convention to try and reclaim his popularity. However, when a former castmate mysteriously disappears, the two must repair their broken friendship and save their friend. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But to you both, I would love to know what you thought of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
It's a ton of fun. I think this year we've seen some really fun movies come out. You know, I love Sonic 2. It's probably one of my favorites of this year. And this is right up there with that balance of nostalgia with a new story, with familiar characters. And it's, you know, a little campy, but there's something to be engaged with. From the beginning, where they did the intro voiceover about the, you know, which Chippendales are the most famous to you, and it's the furniture, and then it's the dancers, and then it's, you know, our chipmunk friends. And from there on, I knew it was just going to be a fun movie.
Growing up, I watched Rescue Rangers on TV pretty much every day after school. So I kind of got to know Gadget and Monterey and all the friends and Fat Cat and all the little episodes that occurred. And it was a great experience just to kind of see all that stuff happening kind of in real time, but not quite in real time. And the cameos were, it was like 30 a second almost, you know, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So it may have been gone a little long for me, but at the same time, there was enough material there to keep my interest.
See, I'm far too young to have seen the original series. That just...
Wrong.
Yeah, I watched it. That's fine. I watched it too. No, it was a classic series. It really was. And actually, I wouldn't say that this is my beef with it because I don't. I thought the movie's hilarious, and from start to finish, I was laughing. Um, there's some great cameos in there, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, I think. But I still can't figure out who this movie is for. That's my one question about this thing. Is and you brought up Roger Rabbit, Alan. I think this is the closest we've gotten to a true sequel to Roger Rabbit, which is great. And they've never been able to replicate it, although Brad Pitt did a weird one in the 90s, I think, shortly after, called Cool World and stuff like that. But
I used to have that on DVD.
I am learning so much about you tonight. Fascinating.
I had a very, very well, I went for a Brad Pitt phase. So it was everything. But I loved Cool World. I loved it.
That doesn't explain Team America World Police, but anyway, we'll come back another time.
That's a much longer podcast for another day.
That's for the summer months. We'll podcast on Team America. No, but that was kind of the thing that I thought was great and also confusing at the same time, because when Roger Rabbit came out, it made sense. Like, here you've got a new character and you've got more adult humor, and it's funny what you can get away in the 80s in what was now I guess it wasn't technically Disney, it was Touchstone if I remember correctly. So it was their more adult brand. But it was a brand new character, and you could do anything you want with it. But you took Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which has its sort of built-in, like, audience, I guess. And of course, that audience would be all adults now anyway. But you took an existing IP of Chip and Dale, which they are still using for kids. Like, they had a Chip and Dale show last year on the site, and you gave us this show, which is hilarious. But I just didn't know who it was for. Because the humor was like beyond. I watched it with my 7-year-old, my 11-year-old. My 7-year-old didn't know what the heck was going on, other than the fact that they were going to catch bad guys. Because normally I said, like, a lot of times they'll with animated films, it's incredibly common to have adult films and have some humor thrown in so the parents aren't sleeping through it. I felt like this was the reverse, and it was like humor. It was an adult film with kid stuff thrown in, so they don't sleep through it. I don't know. What did you think of that?
I mean, in my family, the whole family watched. The 7-year-old kind of enjoyed the rap portion. We'll get to that, I'm sure, later. The 13-year-old was on her phone 10 minutes in, and my wife said, "What is this train wreck of a film I'm watching?" I thought it was pretty good. So I got all sorts of fun stuff.
That's
and
harsh.
I think part of that actually might come from the fact that I think part of it may come from the fact that I think that Disney doesn't seem like in this film that anything's totally sacred. And this used to be something that was such a big, big, big deal. Don't mess with Cinderella, don't mess with Ariel. And now we're just throwing them all out there. We're turning Flounder into somebody that kind of looks like Flounder. And we're talking about films, they were making with bootlegs. And no, this isn't the same thing. I mean, you see Oswald the rabbit and you Chip with one ear, Huh? So, yeah, I could see the confusion for the kids.
I think along those lines too is like who this movie is for. What I can appreciate that we have to ask that question though, as in it's just a movie. It's just it's something that can be fun, and there's always these conversations, especially right now, of who is the audience for this film. You watch it with Obi-Wan, you're watching it with Ms. Marvel, you're, seeing, these people like, well, who is, well, they've changed their intended audience, and people, I can't relate to this anymore. I feel like with something like a Chip and Dale movie, it doesn't need an intended audience. The intended audience is for whoever is going to find enjoyment in mixed animations. CGI, I loved where they made fun of the the Polar Express eyes with that kind of early 2000s animation that drove all of us, like, or at least not all of us, some of us kind of creeped out by it. And then the old school, hand drawn. It was just, hey, this is the conglomeration of the way the movie is literally visually put together, I think is hopefully kind of reflective of the audience. It's anybody's going to relate to cartoons and bootlegging. I was in high school visiting New York City when I first saw like literally people selling bootleg DVDs on the streets. I was 16 years old and I was like, oh, this is a thing. And it was kind of like that. It was like knockoffs of what was playing. And I don't think it needs an intended audience. I think it's just somebody scrolling through. Just if you want something fun to just watch and enjoy and not overthink and see the cameos and see the cartoon characters of people, the shows that you grew up with, it's almost like just in a way, a love letter to nostalgia without being overly cheesy. So, and then maybe that's why everybody loves the 90s right now. So maybe that's why this was so much fun, because I could just go back and be a kid, and I could be a kid with my kids.
It's a fair point. I just thought it was funny because, like, let's just say for now, I guess it would be, if I didn't have kids, I might not have Disney Plus anyway, but a lot of people do. Like, realistically now, because they're all over the map where they're targeting.
Marvel.
Star Wars and Marvel.
National Geographic, Discovery.
Sure. But it just seemed like funny because, if I'm scrolling through, I'm like, ooh, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, it just, my impulse wouldn't be to pop that in just because of what I know about them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I'm glad I did, and it's hilarious. And the references, like the conversations taking place, like Roger Rabbit, the whole thing about it was quite. I don't mean to say it was an adult film, but I say it was more an adult targeting story, adult humor, in that particular way. And I think this was skewering towards that. Like, you think, just pull back for a second and look at the things that are in this film. Human trafficking, addiction, oh geez. I'm trying to think. I've lost my train of thought. But it's all these broad topics that you don't normally see. And the one about the human trafficking story is, I mean, they keep it cartoony, but like that's a pretty intense storyline when you think about it. He's mutating people so that they can make bootlegs, and they're in a fishing or one of those massive shipping containers. And it's funny. The movie's, I'm not trying to pick it apart. I'm not even trying to really criticize it. That was just my one question coming out of it, is I just didn't know. But it worked for me. It's hilarious.
I also think for fans who actually enjoyed the film, the cartoon series growing up, it followed along the same lines, which was actually a bonus. Yes, you got the same voice talent. You got Gadget, you got Monterey, you got Zipper. Well, okay. All right, we'll talk about Zipper later, because that's a big issue for me. But needless to say, having that background and knowing the process and the plot of how a typical episode flowed, you could kind of telegraph what was going on, but it was okay because it was a cartoon. We all want a good ending after 22 minutes. So here we'll go 95 and find 5,000 cameos, and we'll call it a night.
Well, and I think too, like, when you think about that with the formula of it, because too, this is a story about trying, where Dale really wants to do a reboot, Chip says no, and we're watching a reboot happen. And it's obvious, but it's also funny to watch because they stick to those same tropes, and the formula to it, and the crooked cop, oh, that's too obvious. Well, no, why mess with a good thing? Is I think, as he and Pete say, which that was hilarious. Oh my gosh. First off, Will Arnett cracks me up. But for a disgruntled, disillusioned Peter Pan, like, it was just, I don't know where they got Peter Pan from, but I was there for it.
Non-shaving even, you know.
It was great. It reminded me too, and I thought too, it reminded me of Pete from like the old Disney cartoons where he was always the bad guy and he had the cigar and he was, they would do that. It reminded me of that, and even with like the stinky cheese and to Steve's points of some of the content buried into it, you think about the old Disney cartoons that now they put content warnings on because you could get away with it kind of in the 80s, and now now they're putting a disclaimer: this depicts drinking and smoking and outdated cultural references and everything, which I totally understand, but it was kind of like the feel of it had kind of gone back to that in a way.
But they didn't put a warning about, puns or cheesy puns. I find puns, too cheesy anyway, because I'm not good at them,
I think I'm going to put a little...
How many of the puns are cheese related? That's what I want to know.
As many as you want.
Yes.
Should I put a little ticker on the bottom, like checking off how many?
Every 5 minutes.
Well, the cheese did not submit itself to be sliced up because he had far greater schemes. There's another one.
Oh, Alan, I wish we could hang out in person more often and you weren't on a completely different coast.
Yeah, well,
it is.
I'm coming out that way this summer. You never know. Now, going back to what we were talking about with the sacredness of this, is this important for Disney right now? For them to kind of have this, let's kind of let go of things?
That's an interesting question. We've seen it more. I think we've seen it more. Just look at the Wreck-It Ralph sequel, which was, shockingly satirical. I think in the last few years, let's be serious. Disney knows what sells, and right now, self-awareness sells. I would say, but I'm trying to think if there are other examples that are recent.
Pumbaa was talking to Pumbaa or somebody else, like Seth Rogen's character was talking to another Seth Rogen character. So, I mean, it's about as meta as you can get. Oh, speaking of which,
No, but I think something to consider too is we look at Disney from a public relations standpoint right now. And they are,
they're in trouble.
They're in a lot of trouble for a lot of different reasons from a lot of different sides. And they're kind of not making anybody happy right now. And I wonder if something like this, granted, this would have been in development a while ago, but is something like this just a way to appease everybody? It's like neutral. It's not going to be polarizing. It's not really making a lot of statements because it's just like, hey, you know what? You look at the backlash from Turning Red. You look at what people are already saying about Ms. Marvel. You look at the Star Wars fandom and all their drama over Obi-Wan, and something like Rescue Rangers, Chip and Dale, with all these other cameos. How can you screw that up? So maybe somebody will stop talking about all these other things if we just put together a fun, nostalgic cartoon movie.
They've been planning this for 7 years. 2014 is when they first put this into production.
Oh, okay. Well, then that totally debunks my entire theory.
But at the same time, I think Disney's trying to laugh at itself because there's nothing they've had to laugh about lately.
Well, they brought in the crew from Lonely Island, so that's going to kick you. That's going to start moving in that direction anyway. Now, you say it's been since 2014. It's gone through about, I think, 2 or 3 different teams producing it. And then they came up with this format with Akiva Schaffer. I think it's Akiva Schaffer that directed it. But he's part of, Akiva Schaffer. He's part of Lonely Island with Sandberg. And their style of humor has always been much more satirical and wilder. And I think that's an interesting point, though. I think there's, certainly it is. It is one of these types of things. Like, you're not talking about toxic fandom with this. You're just trying to look into the background to see Ash Ketchum trying to buy life insurance. You know, or people are talking about Ugly Sonic, which was fantastic.
That was amazing. You were talking about like poking fun at things and at oneself. That was great.
I love the fact that it's a rebooted film talking about how hard it is to make a rebooted film. That's another thing. Again, I was talking about themes before. This is a film about middle age. Like that's really what it is. It's about dealing with middle age. Not when you're. Well, man, that sounds really dark. I was going to say when your best days are behind you, but that is not what I meant. I meant, but like this fame that they had was long gone, and they're just trying to figure out like, who am I now? What does it mean? And you've got Dale who's clinging to it so strongly, and you've got Chip who's walked away from it entirely, doesn't even want to talk about it, denies it entirely, like it never even happened. I thought that was really interesting. Again, we've seen that before in kids films. In some ways we saw, like, The Incredibles covered that ground, but I just didn't expect it from Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers across the board.
Yeah, midlife crisis, what do you do when life is just suddenly hits you upside the head? Oh yeah, everything in Hollywood happens on a dime. Oh yeah, green light. Oh, now it's red. Sorry. Have fun. Best wishes. If they haven't kicked you out the door already. And so, I could see where Chip could be upset about that. And so, he becomes this insurance agent. He goes home to Millie, which we find out is a dog and not his wife. He lives in this house, and it's just he just tries to live what's somewhat a normal life, where his compadre is more, let's see what I can do. Let me take pictures. Let me get on TikTok. Oh yeah, make sure you subscribe and like and hit that bell at the top. It's like they've suddenly become polar opposites, but yet at the same time they have to figure out how to work together. I mean, think about the driving of the car. Can we just walk? No, he's got this 1989 Mercedes. He's kind of fixed up, and it's got like a fender's about to fall off of it.
When you look at relationships, especially if they break up in a way, not in a good way, to where, Dale felt like he was second banana, and he didn't want to be second banana. And Chip was just kind of blindsided because, thought everything was cool, but at the same time kind of had his own tunnel vision as to the way things should go. And, that gets splintered because, they don't say the things that needed to be said or that they wanted to say. And their identity gets shaped by that moment of where they go their separate ways. And yeah, Chip holds on. He, has a chip on his shoulder. See what I did there, Alan? Give you I did that. See what I did?
Well played.
Pun intended. But and then yeah, Dale, trying to hold on to the glory days of his youth. And but at the same time, the way, when they go into like Dale's garage, he's got the Pog set, which I was so grateful for that, because I start to wonder, is that like a Mandela effect thing? Did Pogs ever really exist? Because nobody ever knows what I'm talking about when I talk about Pogs. Like, that was, oh my gosh. But there is almost like a sweetness about what Dale holds on to. And yes, there's that fame to it, but I think there's also part of it that those, the relationship side of it. And you look at him going to these fan conventions, and, everybody is kind of living the same dream, but there's just, it's not I guess I don't feel that Dale is as desperate as sometimes could be painted in these types of movies, where it's like people, coming back together from their past and restoring a relationship. Like, there was just it was legit. Like, he really loved those days, and he loved those memories, and he did cherish them, even when he had to realize that friendship was more important than business. He kept those things close to his heart, just in a different way. Whereas Chip, it was always there, but yeah, he buried it and went about his day. And they were able to fall back in so easily, where they start doing the Jinx routine where they keep saying the same thing over and over again. But isn't it, hey, I mean, I don't want to go as far and say a shared trauma, but when they're brought together by the loss of a friend or the needs of a friend, I mean, it's pretty here I was thinking it wasn't that deep of a movie, but here I am talking about, how that reflects often broken relationships, they begin to be restored at a point of need from a third party that brings them back. And, for a cartoon to do that as well as it did, to where it didn't even hit me until now. I mean, it's good storytelling, even though it doesn't seem in your face.
There's also shared commonalities which come out eventually. They've fought and they've struggled, and suddenly they both kind of bond over one thing, that they all dislike Alvin and the Chipmunks, which I would agree with him 100% wholeheartedly. But then they start having that rap battle. I don't rap. And then they suddenly figuring out how to rap Dale with Whale. And the next thing I expected was to see Dory fly out. They go, oh, I speak whale. And then, unfortunately, that did not happen, which I think is a discredit.
Missed opportunity there. Missed opportunity.
That was the flaw in the film that Alan really saw. They blew it. The whole thing went right in the toilet in that moment.
But you did see the connections, though. Oh, yeah, they like this. Oh, they connected to this. Oh, yeah, we don't like the fact of someone changing us and turning us into, useful parts. There we go. Because that's what, they kept finding at the end of that whole sequence, which kind of reminded me of Wallace and Gromit, where they're massive contraption, all these weird things happen, and something, oh, wow, there's Monterey's mustache. Ooh, and then you see other little things like a hat here and Bart Simpson's hair here. And I don't know if that's true or not, but the point is they had a connection, and those connections eventually started bringing them back together to the point where they needed to have those in order to be able to complete the movie correctly. Oh yeah, and you also bring in, Gadget and Zipper. Do I go over that now or later?
It's good for them for getting together.
Yeah, I did not realize Gadget. I mean, in the cartoon, here's the thing. In the cartoon, Gadget was like in the middle of a love triangle between Chip and Dale constantly. They were flirting with her left and right. And in the movie, Zipper marries her, the little bug, and they have 42 kids.
I loved it.
Yes, I'm sure there's a reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in there somewhere, but still. And then the voice of Zipper, which I don't remember hearing in the cartoon series, suddenly sounds like Denzel Washington from those Allstate commercials.
No, it's Dennis Haysbert.
Oh, okay.
That's who it is.
Very similar.
Yeah.
It was actually jarring.
Well, Alan, I mean, I hear you saying the tension between, the love triangle in the series, but let's remember, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is fiction. This was real life. This is what we're talking about here. So, I mean, good for them for finding love behind the scenes.
Well, it's much different than, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy and, Mr. Collins, all right? Completely different here.
Heather just came alive at the Jane Austen reference. She just...
I would give bonus points to my class, but class is over. Sorry, guys.
I'll give you bonus points anyway. Anytime you can pull in a Jane Austen, Mr. Collins, Darcy reference, I'm all for it. Elizabeth, yes. My daughter's middle name is Elizabeth, so there we go.
Is that a reference?
Elizabeth Bennet. Steve, you're so disappointing sometimes.
I'm an English major, but Jane Austen is entirely forgettable to me.
Okay, so this has been Screenfish podcast this evening. Steve is no longer able to join us. He has had to excuse himself. We might hear from him again later. We'll let you know.
I've been cut out. I've been cut out of my own podcast.
It's very rare we have a guest on this podcast who is so blatantly wrong. They are no longer invited to participate.
Guess I'm the host.
That makes it even worse, friends.
We'll say this.
All right,
We'll get
you
you
two wrap this up.
okay, we're gonna get you a bottle of Chippendale Rescue Rangers cologne. Okay, smells like almond butter and gasoline. Hope you like
Butter
it.
and gasoline.
Now imagine that.
That got me thinking as we get back on subject here, but where, we were talking about tropes and, if the formula works, don't change the formula. I really thought Ellie was the bad guy. Like I was tracking with Chip on that because it was like, no, it's too, I was like, it's way too obvious. It's a cop, it's one of them, but she couldn't name her favorite episode. So I was totally, I was falling for it. I was falling for like the misdirect of it. Because I'm like, oh, there's no way it's going to be the bad cop thing that, or the sheriff, the chief of police or whatever. Like, that's so overdone. But it was just stuff like that just made it funny.
I kept thinking the Terminator in Terminator 2 when he kept going through stuff because he's silly putty. And then again, they then take him and they throw him against the wall, and then they freeze him because silly putty's next to impenetrable, just like the T-1000 was. Okay, I've thought way too much about this film in the last 20
Well,
years.
I've never seen Terminator 2, so I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Okay,
I've never seen it. I've never seen any of them.
It's the Jane.
So I will now be
action
excused
movie.
from the podcast. It's
Yeah.
just Alan.
We've
Alan's
now
the
lost
only-
two of
now.
our competitors here.
It's the Jane Austen of action movies. I'm telling you. It's yeah. You know what? I will say, in regards to that, first of all, J.K. Simmons is perfect. Don't ever say anything bad about
Yes.
J.K. Simmons ever.
Never.
He's so
Never.
good.
But one of the things I appreciate about this film is that they didn't just like throw in other animated things. We haven't even talked about the styles are wildly different. You've got claymation, you've got old-timey animation, you've got, the CGI surgery, if you will. You've got, they've got all these different things thrown together. And I thought that was really creative. That sort of helped bring credibility to the world because it sort of brought in everybody in different ways, and it allowed more incorporations. And again, we talked about Roger Rabbit before. The other thing that I thought, this is what made Roger Rabbit work to me, is it wasn't just a Disney thing. Disney somehow got other people to sign on to let WB. You've got Bugs Bunny sharing the screen with Mickey Mouse and all this stuff, and that's what was happening here. Like that's what made it so entertaining. Why was Zack Snyder's Batman, E.T., and
E.T. forgives Bat. Is that what that is? Is that what they said?
That'll ever happen.
Or bring Sailor Moon in at the end,
Honestly,
Did I miss that part?
It was near the end.
Yeah, no, the amount of now it was still heavily Disney. Of course, it was heavily Disney, but respect for having it broader. Like even the Sonic reference. I mean, yes, okay, it wasn't the true Sonic, but it's still Paramount. It's still a Paramount image. It was there. It was the, and I mentioned like. There are a lot of them that are in the background, so it's still blurry. Ash Ketchum was my favorite at the he's in the insurance or in the bank, wherever Chip is working, while he's talking to like Shaun the Sheep or that sort of animated, like the Aardman animation. You look behind him and you can see him there with his red cap on buying insurance in one of the shots. And it's just like that's what made it work to me. Again, it wasn't just that was the other thing about Wreck-It Ralph. It was just Disney focused on itself. Every reference in it was a Disney reference pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But this opened up the doors, and I give them credit for that. I thought that was really creative.
I saw Mr. Doubtfire. I saw
Mr. Doubtfire.
Tigra. They brought Marvel into this. They brought
still Disney, all that Disney.
Let's see what else I got here. I'm just pulling up characters from the cast of Cats. Is Cats now and forever? Well, I don't know. I saw South Park. I saw, let's see, I saw Simpsons, Ren and Stimpy, Harry Potter a little bit. There was a big old thing with Dobby. And then just some of the puns that were thrown in the background with some of those names of those movies. Like, for example, Pirates of the Great Lakes instead of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting.
I need to go back to just look at all the bootleg copies of the movies because, the titles are so, what was it? Small Fish Lady instead of Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went back and watched a second time, and that's all I did is look in the background. And you can do that with this film. You can't do that with a lot of them. Like, some, and this one's worth it. Like, the jokes are never pointed out. And I always respect that when a film lets jokes fly by without pointing it out and saying, see, this is funny, and I appreciated that.
Garfield with muscles.
Yes.
Let's see what else I got. I saw some of the Gummy Bears from the cartoon series in the early 80s in there. Snorks, if you look real closely, there was a messed up Snork in one of the bootleg videos.
What? There was a Snork?
Mm-hmm. The one with the little snorkel.
Oh my word! I remember the Snorks. I mean, no, I don't.
But yeah, they were still able to make fun of themselves. Oh yeah, and I forgot McGruff the crime dog at the police station. Just perfect.
I totally thought that was a Canadian thing. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that McGruff the crime dog was American.
Really? Wow. Well, I grew up with McGruff. He's a nice guy.
Alan knows him personally.
Yeah, I've been around long enough.
They're BFF.
Yeah.
The closeness there.
He's my wingman, okay?
Yeah. I just cycling back to the story a bit, though. I think it's interesting. Like one of the things I wanted to say before. I feel like this is a film that wants to explore what it means to matter. And I mean, we sort of talked a little bit about Chip and this idea of fame. I don't think that's necessarily it, but you can certainly see maybe it's part of that midlife crisis. Everybody's trying to sort of figure out what is it that defines them at this point. And for Dale especially, I mean, the con circuit is like the idea of a reboot, the high value of a reboot to everyone on that circuit is just sort of a way to reclaim some of that former glory. But I don't think it's isolated necessarily to them as well. Certainly Peter Pan. I mean, that's his whole story. I was thrown away and now I'm trying to reclaim that, and I'll do that by mutilating people, apparently mutilating other animated characters and throwing them in bootleg films. But I thought that was particularly interesting. We talked a little bit about it, meaning I think the film sort of settles on, I'm not even sure where the film settles on, because I'm not sure it settles on you matter if you're together. I don't think it's settled. That's a very Disney answer, and I don't think it quite settles there. I'm not quite sure what it lands upon.
Yes, I saw, more about, that it was about, knowing who you are, taking risks in life. That's quoted quite a bit. And if you don't take a risk, what are you going to get? And, some things are worth rebooting. That was another direct quote. So what is worth rebooting in life? Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, for that.
It's fair.
So now I'm like, applying that to my life right now. I'm like, what is it that I need to be rebooting?
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing is
what you need to like and subscribe to, and that's Screenfish on YouTube, where you can find lots of. I'm not kidding.
Well, I think also the other part is, what is a risk? What do we define a risk as in these days? Is it just, okay, well, I'll take a stand on something, or is it, well, I'm gonna see what they do and then I'll kind of dip my toe in and we'll see what happens from there. I mean, God in the Bible talked a lot about all sorts of risks that people took. Abraham, Moses, watching a big old army come behind him and all the Israelites. Okay, well, here's the risk, see that ocean or that sea? Do this. And obviously countless more, but The biggest risk is taking no risk at all. Interesting.
This isn't a lull. I'm actually thinking that out. That's
Risk is something that, one, having previously worked in the banking world, I mean, risk is second language to me, and everybody's got a different tolerance of risk. And the things Dale is willing to risk versus what Chip's willing to risk versus what Monterey is willing to risk. They've all got their own individual thresholds. So what is it that the bigger risk, I think, for both Chip and Dale was losing their friend. So, and they were able to rally around that risk and be like, that's not one we're willing to take, to let him to risk losing him, no matter what the years have done. And I think now, as we look at just, we take the pulse of things and how we're, kind of acting as a society. And I think there's a generational thing too. I mean, I know we like to joke about millennials as one, but to go back to those moments of our childhood, because many of us have grown up constantly facing a risk. Well, if I do this bad thing's going to happen, or if I do that bad thing's going to happen. It's event after event after event, and we're tired and we just want to have fun, but and relax and take a nap. But at the same time, it's to just sit in that past for a sense of relief and not take a risk to try something or to rally around a cause is that worse. To just stay stuck where, like, Dale staying focused and Chip completely rejecting it, neither one of them were really living into their lives. I feel super serious for Chip and Dale movie, but
well, that's the interesting that's the interesting thing about this movie. It kind of takes itself pretty seriously for a comedy, an animated comedy. It actually kind of, like, even the fact that they don't use Chip and Dale's voices, they're using John Mulaney and Andy Samberg. Like, John Mulaney, he's got, I love his humor, but he brings a real sort of gravitas to Chip in this film. And everything you're describing there, like, he's just, he's sort of walked away from his life, which is interesting because he is the one that says that line, the greatest risk is no risk at all. And by the end, he's not willing to take any, and he's selling insurance, preventative in the case of risk. Dale is much more willing to take risks, but why he's willing to take risks is there's something missing there in him, but he's not in a bad way necessarily. Well, I guess that's a silly thing to say. Well, I mean, there's something missing anyway. There's
what's driving that?
It's driving,
like, his intent.
Yeah.
Does he care about consequences?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Well,
I mean, because he's ready to jump right into that case and reboot things, from the moment he gets the call.
Yeah.
Here I was at the beginning saying that was just a fun movie, I didn't have to think about it. And now I'm here, I'm like, dang, now I'm thinking about all this stuff.
That's the wine kicking in.
You're funny.
Now, there's one more thing I thought about with this. I told this to Steve a little earlier. We talk a lot about tropes that we see in these films. And one of the tropes that I've seen quite a bit in films, probably the last 3 or 4 years, this sacrifice myself for someone else. You see this constantly. Something happens at the end. This person says, I care, we're buddy. Let me prove it to you. I will basically die for you, if you want to quote Prince. And here you see that right at the end when, spoiler alert, big time, Sweet Pete becomes an amalgamation of about 17 or 18 different characters. And then at the end, he shoots out this gun when he's about to die. And suddenly, Dale takes the bullet or takes the big cannonball. But we talk about dying for others and the sacrifice of Christ that he made for all of us. but how much is that really hitting if we keep seeing it over and over and we don't see that manifested in, how we live our lives? I was thinking about that, and
Are you saying the trope is overused? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to the point where it feels more like it's not irrelevant, but it just washes over people. It used to be, wow, that's powerful, where, Harry Potter, sacrificed himself, for the good of, all the people over at Hogwarts. But, now it seems more commonplace.
What's really interesting I find about that, Alan, too, is especially in movies and in the tropes, it's an ultimate sacrifice. It's you put your life on the line. But the odds of any of us in a given day of being in a situation of where we're going to have to literally give up our life for somebody and make that ultimate sacrifice, right. It's not obvious. Of course, I'm not going to say it never happens, but more than likely, the three of us we're not going to have to face that truly, like, to the depths that it's demonstrated in movies. So yeah, is it an overdone thing to where now we don't know what it looks like? We don't know how to sacrifice things and take risks for people because it's, from an entertainment standpoint, is in our head. Well, to sacrifice our life means to die for somebody. Well, it's like, well, no. What does it mean to sacrifice for other people in your everyday life? And it's almost been like, is it so ingrained in us that sacrifice means death? Whereas no, sacrifice can mean a lot of different things.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that angle, but yeah, you're right. What does it mean to make sacrifices? Sacrifices can be sacrificing your pride isn't quite the word, but I mean Chip makes sacrifices for Dale in this one, other than trying to take a bullet bill for him or whatever that.
He raps. That was a standard. He had that standard. He would never rap, but he rapped.
Reputation.
Yeah.
But I think. Oh, go ahead.
We do see it a little bit these days, though, because as of recent, we've had the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and even someone in at least in American politics, potentially putting your reputation completely on the line for other people. Now take that whatever way you want to take that. But the point is, sacrifices, they do come in different ways. Do we understand what a sacrifice is? And obviously it's not, like as Heather said, we're not necessarily going to be able to have that situation necessarily to go jump in front of a school bus and push some kid out of the way. Paul talks about, in Romans 8, it could happen, but at the right time, Christ died for us. But we may not get that opportunity, but we can sacrifice in other ways to help encourage and help build up students, even if that means just sacrifice of time or friendship or even whatever money's left in my wallet after all this inflation.
I
ain't driving anywhere, that's for sure.
I'm driving on vacation. Oops.
No, yeah, have fun with that.
It's interesting too, because when you bring that up, I feel two things. First of all, I hear what you're saying about the sacrifice in other ways. I think that's really important. I think that's great. I don't worry about it becoming overused. Like going back to your original question, because sure. I think the fact that it is used so much, I think still shows that there stirs and echoes of the need for that. The fact that we understand that that's an important issue, or that's an important step to really show somebody how much you care for them, regardless of what that form it takes. I think sacrifice still registers. And I think it registers no matter how it looks. And I think that's why in film, I don't think it's about it being overused. I think it's about being used well. And I think in this, I'm not a Potterhead or anything by any stretch, but, the finale of Harry Potter hits a little different than taking a Super Mario bullet for somebody else, but maybe not. But again, that's the tone of the film, but it still hits. It still works to help the character development, I think. And I think the fact that it is overused shows the desire that we or with the fact that we still recognize that it matters. that it shows a sign of character, whatever form it takes.
Leaving in the reputation of, Chip and Dale is basically sacrifice who they are for Ellie, because Ellie's caught in this no man's land at the end. She suddenly realizes, okay, well, the police chief is not who he needs to be, and I'm the one who's been swindled. And I was set up earlier about the whole Nickelodeon thing, which I thought was hilarious.
Rugrats.
The Rugrats.
Attack
Paw Patrol.
Okay.
There was you had your Paw Patrol reference.
I thought of you then, Heather. I did.
I love that movie. I love that. It's still one of my favorite kid movies ever is Paw Patrol.
Really? Wow.
Oh, so good. Oh gosh, it was fantastic.
He was very excited about that.
I watched it without my kids at home. I put it on my projector and watched Paw Patrol.
Didn't you interview the producer for that, and you were gushing over it?
I was gushing over that movie. Yes, loved it. Anyway.
Sorry, Alan. Continue, please.
Oh, if I remember what I was saying.
Ellie kind of just stuck.
Yeah, she was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and then another rock and a hard place, and they sacrificed who they were to try to get her into the position where she could actually be used. Otherwise, she was scared. She knew all about him and everything, and to the point where she ended up giving him code. Oh yeah, episode 325. Fish out of the water. Well, they all saw it differently, but again, the end point is you take a risk. A risk is a sacrifice in some capacity. So it transferred well. And I think the more I think about the film, again, I'm like you, Heather, I don't think I was going to go this deep with a film. This is at first I was like, well, this is like trying to find deep spiritual truths in Spaceballs. Probably not.
Is that a dare? Is that a dare?
No, but I might try it.
I will call you
let's
on
go.
That.
There it is.
I can do it with multiple. We can have a whole Mel Brooks series.
Team America, World Police, and Space.
I could legit. I can pretty much justify anything, but it's a gift. But yeah, Alan, I love what you just said. And you can take it back over, but that risk is a sacrifice. And I think so often we talk about risk as transactional and sacrifice as very physical and personal, when in reality there's elements to there's that crossover, that risk isn't necessarily just a transactional consideration, that there's a sacrificial element to risk. I like that.
Yeah, it's like opportunity cost when you're talking in economics. If you're going to take something, what are you going to have to give up in order to make that occur? What is Chip going to have to do in the form of returning back? Is he going to have to tell InsurAcare, oh, I'm sorry, I've decided I'm going to go back and I'm going to spend time with these 42 babies and Zipper and Gadget and what's left of Monty, who is transformed into Dumbo. Oh yeah, and by the way, you know why Dumbo was sad, right? He felt irrelevant.
I think it's the best one of the night, though. I'm gonna be honest.
Well done. Well done.
So the point is, though, he'd have to take a risk at some point. What would the risk for Dale? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to add another Instagram feed, for Chip, and start liking some of the stuff he likes. Maybe drinking Diet Coke. I don't know, or stop drinking Diet Coke.
I think I can actually. I don't know if that was a rhetorical question or a legit question, but I think I can answer that as you're talking. No, not that I don't drink Diet Coke. Give me regular Coke, man. Cold from McDonald's with ice. Oh gosh, McDonald's Coke is so good. But one, and maybe, and I might be overdoing it, but I think of what Chip has to risk and sacrifice is what he has professed, that he would never do a reboot, that he would never rap, that everything was okay. Chip has to come to a point where he has to be like, you know what? I've changed my mind. And none of us ever want to take the risk of what it means to say and to admit I've changed my mind.
Repentance.
And then repentance. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, really hit that. And then with Dale, I think Dale's, risk of what he had to sacrifice was his vision for how things were going to go. That everybody was going to come back together. It would be butterflies and rainbow, and they were going to make this movie, and everybody would just pick up where they left off. And I think Dale had to risk some of that. I don't, whether or not he was naive or whatnot, or just, I think Dale he had to, let go of some of the goofiness that we know and love about Dale and get serious and dig deeper. So I don't know if you wanted actual answers to those questions, but those are my answers.
That's good. I mean, you're at the end, oh yeah, Chip. All right, hit me over the head this time, I've never been hit. I'm the straight-laced guy. I'm the one who kind of indirectly runs the show. Hit me.
I like that moment because you could tell for the first time it's sort of Chip realizes it's like, we've been doing this to you for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked, that was one of my favorite moments. And it was just because it sort of was like this strange realization of, what have I been doing? And I have those moments all the time where it's like, I've been doing that for 30 years or whatever it is. Oh. And it was just a subtle moment, and again, but I thought that was pretty strong.
A lot stronger movie than we thought it was from first glance, in other words.
Well, I mean, we've dug deep into the world of Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, more so than any of the three of us would probably have anticipated we would have done at this point. But we should start to reel it in. Let's screen it or skip it. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, screen it or skip it.
Well, in my case, I heard a story once of a police officer who came across the scene of a crime, and they found some tortilla chips and they found some chickpeas and some olive oil. And it turned out he admitted it was a homicide. Now, would I agree to screen it or skip it? I would actually screen it. My first thought was screen it once, skip it, try two, but now I think I would give it a second try to see if I could go through those levels deeper. Maybe suddenly do this psychological profile on ugly Sonic. Why in the world he wanted to go slow and got involved with the FBI.
I want to see the Sonic FBI series. Like, I'm all in on that. I want to see the ugly Sonic FBI series.
Don't say that out loud. If Disney hears you, we're gonna get one. Okay, I don't want that to be real.
They want to make a series. They need to make a live action Phineas and Ferb, and they need to have me as Doofenshmirtz. Okay, done.
I'd watch that. I'd watch that.
I love to be
That good.
Phenomenal.
But yes, I would definitely screen it.
Yeah, definitely. I think I maybe saw a trailer once for it. Like, it was not in my brain at all that, the Chip and Dale movie is out. So it was really, hey, let's podcast on it. Okay, well, I gotta watch it now. And I'm glad I did. It was funnier than I thought it was going to be. It was more engaging than I thought it was going to be, and clearly now it's deeper than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, definitely screen it. I would say too, probably a second time, just to catch all the Easter eggs and the cameos you may have missed the first time. I clearly need to go back and watch, because there's stuff that I would have been like, that totally went over my head, that now I need to want to go back and laugh at. So totally screen it.
Yeah, I still feel like this. I'm fine with screening it on this. I laughed. It's hilarious. I still don't know who it's for. I don't know who to tell to screen it. I mean, like I said, but as an adult, as an adult familiar with the franchise back when it was on the air, there's no shame in seeing this and saying, hey, I think I'm going to pop that on. I just thought it would be such a weird experience, but it's really not for my kids. Like, my kids at 7 and 11 or 12, because birthday's coming. I mean, it's like they weren't really into it.
My boys loved it. I will say that. They're 7 and 11, and they said it was almost as funny as Sonic 2.
Wow.
They had a grand old time.
Okay.
You know how my kids felt, so I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I made them watch the old one. We've watched the old ones and the new versions too. I mean, if it's on Disney Plus at some point, my kids have probably watched it. Next, it'll be a live action Bluey. Maybe Disney has that in the works. Sign me up for when that movie comes out.
We want Peppa
They're
Pig.
listening.
We want Peppa Pig. No.
Or Caillou. No, not Caillou. No, never
Caillou. We won't even. Don't even say that name out loud. But no, it's just funny. I hear that about your kids, and my boys loved it. They laughed as all get out. I heard them laughing downstairs.
Well, well, maybe it's because they're girls. I don't know. I mean, I can't.
They're boys. No, they're son. No, Jeremiah and Timothy. Oh, you're talking about your girls.
Mine too. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
I thought that was a weird comment too. I was like, well, maybe it's because your boys are girls. I don't.
No, please don't take it that way.
Maybe cut that part out. Steve.
I will. I'm cutting that part out. I will. But
anyway, we should wrap it up.
I'm smarter than that. No.
Yeah, I didn't see Yogi Bear.
What?
I didn't see Yogi Bear in there.
No, but old and depressed bootleg Pooh Bear was hilarious when they're cutting. Yeah. See, when they were cutting through those movie scenes, that was like Blazing Saddles, like where they were like that. If you want to talk Mel Brooks, like they're going back through the movies to the movie set.
It's good.
All I could think of was that scene in Blazing Saddles.
No, which one? The ending sequence where everything kind of goes haywire.
Where they're doing the chase and it's all this set.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
yeah, and the Legos were mentioned too. I forgot Lego guy was in there.
Yes.
And Lego Miserable. I want to see that.
Oh, Lego.
Yes, Lego.
I so want to see that.
Yeah, that I'd watch.
Is there anything else? Top 10. I did. I enjoyed also the cameo with Paula Abdul and Opposites Attract. If you saw that with her and the cartoon cat. That was early on in the film. And I kept thinking, that's a good mesh between, real. If you don't know what I'm seeing, YouTube Opposites Attract by Paula Abdul. And you'll know exactly.
Because that was the music video.
Yeah, it was.
It was. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to try to sing like her, but yeah.
Well, I mean, to you both, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for chatting Chippendale Rescue Rangers with me. I really do appreciate it. And a reminder, for you at home, a reminder that you can find us wherever podcasts are available, Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podomatic, all these great places. You can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Look us up at Screenfish. On the podcast channels, we are Screenfish Radio. And if you go to the podcast page on our website, screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, which are small group questions to help you get the conversation started, because when you deep dive into Chippendale Rescue Rangers, you're going to want to have some questions and talk about it with some people too. Alan, Heather, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.